Much appreciated for the enhancement, my beloved Ethan, he beamed while walking into the family room, flinging his designer shades onto the center table. There, he positioned himself, insufferably self-assured in his custom-fitted outfit and spotless new footwear, his travel bags overflowing with expensive brand names. Premium flight to Europe, upscale accommodations. This represents the lifestyle I've been yearning for. Sarah, I couldn't contain myself. Laughter erupted from me. What's so amusing? He demanded, his expression darkening. Oh, Ethan, I responded, moving my head side to side. You're completely unaware of what you've accomplished. My identity is Sarah. I'm 34, and I'm employed in cybersecurity. For the past 7 years, I've been wed to someone who proved to be a parade of warning signs masquerading as charisma. Ethan consistently played the role of the visionary, the fantasizer, the individual who could make any concept sound like genius strategy. In the meantime, I was the person who brought those strategies to fruition, maintaining a stable profession while he jumped between one poorly conceived venture after another. I overlooked the red flags, the financial mysteries, the endless justifications for his absence of earnings, because I wanted to trust we functioned as partners. However, at 2 a.m. last week, Ethan committed an error he couldn't smooth talk his way past. I had been sleeping upstairs when the incident occurred. He must have waited until he was certain I was unconscious before creeping down to my computer. My cybersecurity profession had trained me to monitor potential fraud schemes, but I never imagined I'd required those abilities within my own household. That evening, Ethan utilized my computer to gain access to one of my payment cards. He documented the information, captured several photographs with his mobile device, and crept back to bed as if nothing had transpired. The following morning, while enjoying my coffee, I discovered a barrage of notifications on my device. I accessed my financial application to discover nearly $50,000 in purchases, luxury garments, costly timepieces, premium flights to Paris. My heart dropped as everything fell into place. Ethan was responsible for this. Naturally, he was. But rather than feeling panic, I found myself smiling. The card he had utilized wasn't from a personal account. It was a practice credit card connected to an educational program I manage at my workplace. It's created to instruct businesses on identifying and addressing fraud. Each transaction automatically generates an alert that goes directly to law enforcement. Ethan was oblivious that he had just transformed himself into a training example. I contacted my attorney, Chloe, that same morning. You won't believe what happened, I explained, sharing every detail. She didn't attempt to suppress her amusement. Hold on, let me understand this correctly. She said between giggles, he took a practice card, the one connected to fraud monitoring. Precisely, I confirmed, my tone composed but tinged with contentment. I don't believe he understood his actions. He likely believed he was being shrewd. Shrewd, Chloe responded. He's in serious trouble. Every purchase he makes will be detected. Have the authorities reached out to you yet? Not yet, but it's inevitable. For the remainder of the week, I remained silent, curious to see how extensively Ethan would push things. He left a message on the counter several days later, taking some personal time. Don't stay awake for me. I knew precisely what that indicated. He was using my stolen funds to enjoy himself overseas. Each evening, I observed the fraud notifications arrive. upscale dining establishments, luxury hotels, and lavish shopping excursions. Every alert felt like a small triumph. 3 days into his spending spree, I received a call from Agent Keller, a federal investigator handling the case. "We've detected substantial fraudulent activity linked to your account," he stated. "Do you have any idea who might be involved?" "Yes," I answered immediately. "My husband." There was a momentary silence. "Your husband." I described the circumstances, including the fact that the card was part of a cybersecurity program. Agent Keller released a quiet whistle. "That's unprecedented," he said. "You'll need to give an official statement. But based on what we've already detected, he's facing serious consequences." When Ethan returned through the entrance, his pride swollen from a week of extravagance, I was prepared. He strutted into the family room as though nothing had occurred, displaying the rewards of his stolen adventure. "Much appreciated for the enhancement," he declared with an arrogant smile. "You truly exceeded expectations this time." I couldn't contain the laughter that escaped me. Ethan scowled, clearly anticipating my fury. "What's so humorous?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "Oh, Ethan," I said, shaking my head. "You're about to discover." Ethan placed his luxury travel bag on the floor with a conceited thump. "Honestly, though, Sarah," he said, removing his tailored jacket and hanging it over the sofa back, "you should have informed me about that card long ago. Consider how much enjoyment we could have experienced." I positioned myself against the kitchen counter, arms folded. "And how precisely did you imagine this would conclude?" he smirked, stepping out of his shoes. "You're perpetually so anxious about finances. It's not as though you couldn't manage it. I assumed you'd move past it once you witnessed how content it made me." His complete boldness would have been maddening if it weren't so pitiful. I suppressed a laugh, knowing that every moment he spent boasting was another piece of evidence against him. "So the timepieces, the flights, the accommodations, you believed all of that was simply a present from me." "Not believed," he said, gesturing to himself. "Knew. It's overdue that you relaxed." I smiled, a restrained expression that revealed nothing. "I'm certain," once Ethan vanished into the bathroom, humming some irritating melody. I grabbed my phone and messaged Chloe. "He's returned. Ready to proceed." Her response was instant. "Perfect. I'll notify Agent Keller." Throughout the previous week, Chloe and Agent Keller had been building the case against Ethan. His every action had been monitored, every charge carefully documented, from the designer clothing stores to the luxury hotels in Paris. His indulgence created a portrait of someone who believed they were immune to consequences. Ethan was unaware of how deeply he had sealed his own fate. Agent Keller had assured me that the fraud alerts from the practice account had already initiated a comprehensive investigation. "We'll bring him in for questioning when you're ready," he had said during our previous conversation, but I'd suggest allowing him to walk into it himself. The more overconfident he is, the better. Now, as I listened to Ethan's off-tune singing, resonating from the bathroom, I experienced an almost surreal sense of tranquility. For years, I had allowed him to exploit my trust, my generosity, my reliability, but this time, he was about to face the repercussions of underestimating me. After Ethan emerged, wrapped in a luxurious towel and grinning as though he hadn't a worry in the world, he collapsed onto the couch. "You should have witnessed Paris," he said, reaching into his bag to retrieve a gleaming gold timepiece. "The boutiques, The restaurants. It was like a fantasy. Sounds amazing, I said, leaning against the doorframe. Tell me more. He began a comprehensive account of his week-long spree, complete with dramatic hand movements and unnecessary details about the champagne quality at some rooftop establishment. Every word felt like an accusation, a confession. He didn't realize he was providing. He was oblivious that I was recording the entire discussion on my phone, the file prepared to be sent to Agent Keller. And the finest part, Ethan said, lifting the watch to examine it. Nobody suspected anything. Not even you. The following morning, Chloe and I met over coffee to finalize the schedule. He has no defense, she said, reviewing the evidence we had gathered. The fraud alerts, the charges, his conversation from last evening, it's ironclad. Agent Keller is prepared to bring him in for questioning. They're coordinating with local police to execute the arrest. I nodded, the weight of everything finally beginning to settle. What occurs afterward? He'll face multiple charges including fraud, identity theft, and unauthorized use of a financial account, Chloe explained. Given the sum of money involved, it won't be a minor penalty. Best case scenario for him, he negotiates a deal and avoids imprisonment. Worst case, he's facing years incarcerated. Part of me wanted to feel sympathy for him, but then I recalled the smug expression on his face, the way he had displayed his stolen merchandise without a second thought about the harm he had caused. This wasn't merely an error. It was a pattern of selfishness and privilege that I had been oblivious to for far too long. Later that evening, as Ethan relaxed on the couch, browsing his phone, I heard the unmistakable sound of knocking at the entrance. My pulse quickened, not with worry, but with expectation. I approached the door and opened it to reveal Agent Keller and two uniformed officers standing on the porch. Good evening, Miss Miller, Keller said, his tone professional yet friendly. Is Ethan present? He's right inside, I said, stepping aside to allow them entry. Please make yourselves comfortable. Ethan glanced up from his phone, his eyebrows drawing together in bewilderment. What's happening? He asked, sitting up straighter. Agent Keller approached him with calm authority that made the room feel smaller. Ethan Miller, you're under investigation for multiple counts of credit card fraud and unauthorized use of financial accounts. We'd like you to accompany us for questioning. Ethan's complexion went ashen, his confidence disappearing instantly. What? No, this must be an error, he stammered, looking to me for support. Sarah, tell them this is insane. I crossed my arms, tilting my head slightly. I'm not sure, Ethan. You've been quite active lately. Perhaps you should explain it to them. As the officers read him his rights and guided him toward the door, Ethan continued to object. You can't do this, Sarah. This is a conspiracy. You're my wife. Aren't you supposed to support me? Interesting, I said, leaning against the doorway. I believed husbands weren't supposed to steal from their wives. I suppose we're both discovering something new today. Ethan glared at me, his bravado replaced by desperation. You won't succeed with this. I smiled. Oh, Ethan? I already have. The door closed with a sharp sound as the officers escorted Ethan out, leaving the living room strangely quiet. Quiet. I stood there momentarily, staring at the empty space where he had been standing just minutes earlier. My heart was racing, not from fear, but from the sheer magnitude of the moment. He was gone. Finally, undeniably gone. But this wasn't finished. Not yet. About an hour later, Chloe called. "He's with Agent Keller now," she said, her voice calm but firm. "They've begun questioning him. From what Keller told me, Ethan is already attempting to spin the narrative in his favor." "Of course he is," I said, rolling my eyes. "Let me guess. He's playing the victim." "Exactly," Chloe replied with a dry laugh. "He's claiming you gave him permission to use the card. But don't worry. Between the fraud alerts, the charges, and your recording, he doesn't stand a chance." The next morning, Agent Keller called with an update. "We have everything we need," he said. "Your husband, admitted to using the card but insists he didn't know it was connected to a fraud detection program. He's trying to blame the confusion on you." "That sounds typical," I said, leaning back in my chair. "What happens next?" "We're proceeding with the charges," Keller explained. "He's facing multiple counts of fraud and unauthorized use of a financial account. Given the amount of money involved, he'll be looking at significant consequences. The buyer protection programs flagged his luxury purchases, so those are being reimbursed. You're not liable for a cent." The relief I felt was immediate and overwhelming. 4 days I had carried the burden of Ethan's actions, worried that somehow he had managed to slip through the cracks. But now, hearing Keller's confidence, I realized the full extent of my victory. "Thank you," I said, "for everything." "Don't thank me," Keller said. "This case practically solved itself. You handled this brilliantly. The consequences hit Ethan harder than I anticipated." Word spread quickly among our mutual friends and acquaintances about his arrest, and it wasn't long before his carefully constructed image of the charming, carefree husband began to collapse. Nicole, the woman I suspected he had been seeing, apparently abandoned him the moment she heard about the charges. The designer goods he had flaunted were confiscated. The flights he had booked were canceled, and the banks froze his accounts. One evening, I received a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered, and sure enough, it was Ethan. "Sarah," he began, his voice low and exhausted, "I need to speak with you." I couldn't help but laugh. "Ethan, the only thing you need to do is figure out how to explain yourself to the judge. Please," he said, his tone shifting to desperation. "I made a mistake, okay? I didn't intend for it to go this far. I was just just what?" I interrupted, my voice cold, "just trying to steal $50,000 from me. Just hoping I wouldn't notice. Just counting on me being too blind or too forgiving to stop you." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Finally," he muttered, "I thought you loved me." I let out a sharp breath, my anger boiling over. "I did, Ethan. I loved the person I thought you were, but the person who stole from me, who lied to me, who thought he could get away with it, that's not someone I could ever love." Before he could respond, I hung up. A week later, Chloe called to confirm that Ethan had accepted a plea deal. "He's avoiding jail time," she explained, "but he'll have to pay back every cent he attempted to steal and complete community service. Plus, his credit will be in ruins for years." "That sounds appropriate," I said. "He always wanted the luxurious life. Now he gets to see how the other half lives. Chloe laughed. You're handling this much better than most people would. It's amusing, I said, smiling to myself. For years, I thought Ethan was the one who kept things together in our marriage. I thought his charm, his ambition, his grand ideas were what kept us moving forward, but now I see it clearly. I was the one holding everything up. He was just dead weight. The day the divorce papers arrived, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the couch, looking around the apartment that now felt wholly and completely mine. Ethan's absence wasn't a loss, it was a gift. A chance to rebuild my life without the constant shadow of his selfishness. As I sipped my wine, I thought about the moment he had walked through the door, flaunting his stolen goods and mocking me for the supposed upgrade he had given himself. He had been so confident, so sure of his own brilliance, and now he was the one paying the price. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. This wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a life I could finally call my own. The apartment felt eerily quiet in the days after Ethan's arrest. His belongings were gone. What little he hadn't sold or stuffed into his designer duffel bag, but the space felt lighter, almost like the weight of his betrayal had been physically lifted. For the first time in years, I could sit in my own home without feeling his shadow looming over me. Chloe stopped by one afternoon to drop off some final paperwork. How are you managing? She asked, sitting on the couch with her usual straightforward demeanor. Better than I expected, I admitted, handing her a cup of coffee. It's strange, but I don't even feel angry anymore. Just relieved. She smiled knowingly. That's because you've already won. You didn't just survive this, Sarah. You came out stronger. I thought about that as we reviewed the documents, finalizing the details of Ethan's financial restitution. It wasn't just about the money, though knowing he would be paying back every cent was satisfying. It was about finally reclaiming my independence. For years, I had let Ethan dictate the terms of our relationship, thinking it was easier to maintain peace. But now I realized that peace built on compromise and silence wasn't peace at all. The official letter of divorce arrived a week later, delivered in an unremarkable envelope that felt far too small to contain something so monumental. I held it for a moment, letting the weight of it sink in before tearing it open. My eyes scanned the lines of legal jargon until I found the words that mattered most. Finalized and irrevocable. I sat down at the kitchen table, the letter in my hands, and allowed myself a rare moment of reflection. This wasn't the life I had imagined when I married Ethan. I had pictured stability, partnership, and a future built on mutual trust. But now, as I looked around the home I had rebuilt for myself, I realized I had something better. Freedom, clarity, and the knowledge that I was stronger than I had ever given myself credit for. Lauren came over that evening with a bottle of wine and a container of my favorite takeout. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass, and to the absolute disaster you just walked away from. I laughed, clinking my glass against hers, to never settling for less than I deserved. Over the next few weeks, I started to piece together what my new life would look like. I redecorated the apartment, adding splashes of color and personal touches that felt like me. I finally took the solo vacation I had been dreaming about for years, exploring the coast and soaking in the kind of peace that only comes from leaving everything behind for a little while. Ethan tried to reach out a few more times through mutual acquaintances, vague apologies over email, even a laughably tone-deaf letter claiming he had changed. But I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. Every now and then, I would hear updates about his life through the grapevine. He was struggling to find work, his reputation tarnished by the fraud charges. He had moved back in with his parents, apparently still clinging to the belief that he could talk his way out of anything. I didn't feel sorry for him. If anything, I felt relief. He wasn't my problem anymore. A month after everything had been finalized, I stood by the window of my apartment, sipping my morning coffee and watching the city come to life below. The sunlight poured into the living room, highlighting the fresh coat of paint I had picked out my favorite shade of blue. The space no longer felt like a battleground. It felt like home. It was peaceful, mine, and filled with possibilities. Thought about the journey that had brought me here. For years, I had believed in the promise of marriage, in the idea of building a life with Ethan. I had ignored the little voice inside me that whispered something was off, that warned me his charm was a mask for selfishness. But now I understood something important. Walking away wasn't failure. It was strength. Lauren and I met for brunch that weekend, a new ritual we had started since Ethan's exit, over mimosas and waffles. She asked, "So what's next for you?" I smiled, feeling a mix of excitement and calm that had eluded me for so long. Honestly, I'm just focusing on myself for now. Work's going great, and I've been thinking about taking a longer vacation, maybe somewhere quiet near the mountains. She raised her glass. That's what I like to hear. You deserve it. For the first time in years, I felt like I was making decisions purely for me. No compromises, no second guessing, just the freedom to live on my own terms. Occasionally, I would still get updates about Ethan from mutual acquaintances. He was struggling to rebuild his life, moving from one low-paying job to the next while trying to pay back the money he owed. The designer suits and luxury trips were long gone, replaced by a harsh reality he wasn't prepared for. I didn't dwell on it. He had made his choices, and I had made mine. The last time I heard from him was through an email, a long, rambling apology that seemed more self-pitying than sincere. I read the first few lines before deleting it without a reply. I didn't need closure from him. I had already found it in myself. One evening, I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine, reflecting on everything I had been through, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the fight to reclaim what was mine. It had all led to this moment, and while it hadn't been easy, it had been worth it. I no longer felt angry or bitter about what had happened. If anything, I felt grateful. Ethan's betrayal had forced me to confront my own strength, to stop compromising, and start prioritizing myself. I had learned to trust my instincts, to value my independence, and to never again let someone else take the reins of my life. As the city lights flickered in the distance, I raised my glass to the night sky. "Here's to me," I said quietly. "Here's to starting over." And with that, I closed the chapter on Ethan for good, ready to embrace whatever came next.